Joshua Gray, ESL executive producer. You might recognize him from all of the great things that they've done with MKX Pro League and of course a lot of other esports stuff, which we'll get into real quick. But I did want to ask you when we spoke briefly at Red Bull Battlegrounds. I hadn't met you before, so it's just a brief conversation. But I didn't realize you were from the Seattle area, which is actually where I'm from. Where'd you grow up?
So I grew up near Seattle. I was born in Vancouver, Washington, and then when I was 2, my family moved to Federal Way, which is a
Okay,
suburb of Seattle-Tacoma. All of
right.
my siblings were born in the Tacoma Hospital, but we moved to Kansas after that when I was 14. But I still consider the Seattle area one of my favorite places in all the United States.
You were born way down south there, almost Portland or almost Oregon, I should say. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm actually
yeah,
across the
almost
valley.
Oregon.
I'm across the valley in Auburn, so that's so before we get into the whole esports discussion, there's one you briefed me on some things, which is actually really cool. That's the first time I've ever had someone actually brief me on a lot of different things, and I appreciate that
Well, I'm getting
because
ready
then
when I
you
have
get to,
to hire a publicist. Publicist usually
yeah,
takes care of
yeah.
that. So yeah, there you go.
I need me one of those. There was one other note of interest that it just caught my eye. So you used to be in the Air Force, and you earned. First of all, how do you earn a call sign?
Ooh, I can't tell you.
Okay, you you
So
probably
you
have to
go
kill me after
you
this.
go through you go through a lot of training. I can't get into the details of the training, but you go through training, and then when you graduate out of the training, they give you your call sign. It was through the Arnold Air Society, which is part of the ROTC, and it was very intense, and that's the most I can tell you. But having the call sign clutch was super awesome, and I got that call sign because I bought a car from another cadet, and it was my first stick shift. And
Oh boy.
he had taught me how to drive it the day that I bought it with him for about 2 hours. And then I was up on a hill, and hills were tough using
Yeah.
a clutch. So I backed into a truck behind me, and I was with another cadet. And the guy in the truck's like, "What the heck's going on?" I was like, "It's all right, dude. It's all right. There's no damage." And I had the other cadet that was with me drive the car back. Well, the senior cadre, the senior cadets, and my senior officers found out about that story. So when I became a second lieutenant in AAS, they give you your call sign, and my call sign was clutch. And from then on, I was like, "Well, that's going to be my gamer tag. That's going to be everything," and it stuck with me ever since.
I was hoping you would say it's because you were clutch at games like Mortal Kombat X or World of Tanks. I don't know what all games you've played in the past, but I was
Yeah, that's
hoping
why
that
I
it would
kept
be
that's why I
something.
kept the gamer tag for sure,
All
for
right.
sure.
Um, so for those that don't know you, again, we met briefly at Red Bull Battlegrounds in Seattle. We had just a little bit of chance to talk because you are obviously doing a lot of good work there. I guess producing some stuff, maybe obviously doing interviews and things. That was a great event, by the way.
It was. Shout out to Red
But
Bull for putting on a.
again, going down your credentials, you had I guess a longer reach into esports than even I realized. So I know that I've seen some discussion actually on Twitter recently where people are talking, of course, as esports gets bigger, right? It's not
Mhm.
just the players that are of course in esports. It's commentators and productions. Productions getting bigger, so people want to get involved in esports in a lot of different ways. So I actually wanted to ask you, how did you get your start in esports?
I got my start when I was in my junior year of college. Before that, I had heard about Boxer, who was an amazing StarCraft Brood War player out of Korea. I
Okay.
had played StarCraft Brood War in the Seattle area growing up as a kid, went to a couple LAN tournaments, just very, hobby niche communities that I
Mhm.
was involved in growing up because I love playing video games. And when the internet came out, especially broadband internet, changed the world, able to play with people from all over the world and get to know them and share videos and strategies. And that was my first taste of what esports was all about through Brood War. When StarCraft 2 came out, I was very excited about it. I had a YouTube channel, a countdown series, and I went to the first ever tournament for MLG in North Carolina at Raleigh. And I was in Virginia at the time, about ready to go into my junior year of college. And after going to the event and meeting some key people, and they took a look at my YouTube channel, I said, "Hey, I'd love to work with you guys in the future to help make this stuff even bigger and better." Because entertainment's in my blood. I've been an entertainer ever since I was 5, singing, dancing, and acting and playing video games. And for me to marry my two loves of playing video games and performing, it made the most sense. So jumping on the MLG train, I was a cameraman at first and was a producer or associate producer and just really trying to help to make the shows even better because we knew what we wanted out of this game, out of StarCraft 2. And I knew what I wanted when it came to the spectacle of these events. I moved my way up the ladder, became a host for StarCraft 2. I also hosted for League of Legends. And once my name was out there and started to establish my brand, that allowed me to have even more, I would say, input for the different shows and to really
Sure.
flex my muscles when it came to being creative. And that allowed me to experiment with shows that I did. I did a talk show on Twitch for over 80 episodes called Shifting Gears. I worked with NESL. I continue to work with MLG, not just with StarCraft 2, but also in the Dota and some Diablo 3 content. Really started to flex my muscles in the space. And that allowed me to take a full time job with NASL, working for minimum wage at first to really build out what we were doing with StarCraft, and then it turned into World of Tanks. And I just continued to work hard with whatever project I had to make it the best it could be, which is very difficult because your vision and the budget can be completely separate things at first. But
Yeah.
over the last 7 years working in the space, to be able to work on the side as a contractor and then move all the way up to full time and now an executive producer, working with the second largest media company in the world, Warner Brothers, and producing some of the most successful digital assets they've ever seen, it's been an amazing ride. And I'm very appreciative to those that gave me a shot, that gave me a chance, and allowed me to really execute on the vision that I would come up with or that my team would come up with.
Right, right. That's great. I think we're seeing more people who want to do things like go to school, and even though their careers or their choices aren't necessarily in school, aren't necessarily geared towards esports, they're sort of making decisions that kind of put them in place that, it could be something like video production or whatever, right? You go to school for video production, but hey, that just means they're going to transition into doing something related to esports production, right? Or journalism, whether it's written or again, video. I mean, it just commentating, things like broadcast journalism, things like that, just puts them in the position to do those things. So that's actually pretty cool, and that's some conversation I've seen recently. So I really wanted to touch on that with you. Uh,
It's yeah, it's great. It's great that people can bring all sorts of talent into this space. This is an entertainment space. The only
right.
difference is we don't have athletes sweating on a field made of grass or turf. It's
Uh-huh.
athletes, if not sweating, then being mentally fatigued after having to put in these inputs at fractions of a second. It's the same amount of
Yeah.
time a batter has in the batter's box in an MLB game. That's the same amount of decision making time these guys have, except it's back to back to back to back to back. So it's esports is still a bit of the Wild West, but we have seen some structure. We have seen some companies be successful in trying to wrangle all of the passion into a concentrated spot. But there's still a long way to go. And as long as the people that built it from the ground up are continuing to be involved, we'll still have success in the esports space.
I know this might be a tough question for you. You probably don't. It might be putting you on the spot a little bit, but you've done a lot of work in different scenes, different communities. And we'll get to fighting games, obviously, here in just a little bit. But do you have a favorite? Is there
Fighting
a favorite
games.
community?
Yeah,
Okay,
fighting games are hands down the most entertaining to watch, the most mainstream friendly, and in my opinion, show off some of the best skills that players can bring to the table. And I don't mean just playing the game, I also mean their
sure.
personalities, on
Hmm.
camera skills, being able to be professional and at the same time a bit controversial. The fighting game community has been doing this for years and they will
Hmm.
continue to do it. And it's been amazing just to add a top layer to what they already have, to what they've already established. And in my opinion, well, not just my opinion, but the facts show that fighting games are the number one game to watch in a linear TV format, and in my opinion, are the most fun to watch. Quick anecdotal story: my parents and my family have definitely been supporting me since day one,
Hmm.
and when they tuned in and watched the MKX Pro League for all of our major events, they watched every minute of it and they understood everything that happened. They could not say the same thing for League or Dota or other
Sure.
games that I've been involved in. Nothing against those games. Those games are phenomenal and they have an amazing community behind them. But in my opinion, they're not conducive to mainstream. Fighting games
Hmm.
are conducive to mainstream. And that's why I have decided to put everything I know and everything that I've learned into that space because I think it's going to be the most beneficial for everybody.
I'm glad you responded with that answer because it just segues right into a lot of what I want to talk about, of course. But one of the things we talked about in Seattle at Red Bull Battlegrounds was MKX. I can't remember exactly, but Pro League season 3 had wrapped up, and I think maybe we had just gotten a little bit of information about Injustice 2 at that point. I don't think we knew a lot yet, but I remember talking to you about that, and talking about things like, Injustice 2, because of course, the superheroes, the comic books, less sort of gore involved than Mortal Kombat. You mentioned that you felt like that would be big for the future, whether it's ESL or whatever, right? But before we talk about that, I wanted to actually ask you how difficult, and I don't know if this was you coming up with this or if you had to sort of convince ESL, but how difficult was it to kind of sell the Mortal Kombat X Pro League idea?
Well, I got the idea because I'd been working in esports for a while, and I had just finished hosting a show called Gauntlet for WB. It was a lot of
Hmm.
fun. It was a throwback retro arcade game, and we hosted a show for it. And we were in the parking lot, and one of the individuals from Warner Brothers was talking to me about some stuff, and time stopped in this moment. It felt like the entire universe was waiting for this one moment to happen. And everything slowed down, and I knew exactly what he was going to say before he said it. And he says, "Yeah, we've been thinking about some programs for Mortal Kombat." And I
Okay.
leaped into the air and I said, "I have ideas. Let's talk." And we spoke for about 45 minutes in the parking lot with my initial ideas that I had. Then after that, I went home, started writing out all my notes, everything that I had learned in the esports space that I wanted to apply to a fighting game, but not just to a fighting game, an online component to
Right.
the fighting game community that just didn't have something solid yet because of either the state of the netcode of previous games or the newness of technology. I mean, broadband internet has only been out for how many years, while the FGC has been out for a lot longer with their local arcades and local destinations. So it was quite a feat to try to tackle something like this, but to leverage all the strengths that ESL had to offer, along with the friendships that I had made, not just from my initial love of fighting games when I saw it on the MLG circuit, but also playing with these guys and getting better at Mortal Kombat 9 and playing Smash and playing other games and really having a profound love for how fighting games work and the fundamentals you need to learn in order to be good at it. So take all of that, apply that to the teams that I had at ESL, putting together the schedules, what's best for the players, what's best for the broadcast, looking at what airs on Wednesday night, not just on Twitch, but on CW,
Sure.
ABC, NBC, and really doing all the research as a TV producer would on how to make this the best it can be. So after designing the cup system, the broadcast system, the point system, and working with all the teams at ESL, this vision that I had, I was able to take to Warner Brothers, who then took it to NetherRealm. And I remember flying out to Chicago and having that first initial meeting and really driving home for them that you have to have a skin, an item available for crowdfunding, because that's one of the best ways for
Right.
people to support this system. And for all of this knowledge of what's best in the scene and what's working with the scene to be presented in front of a committee like that, when you have people that have been involved in Mortal Kombat since day one, especially Ed Boon, who I'd looked up to as a creative individual for a long, long time. I mean, I did martial arts for 10 years. I
Hmm.
was so excited when the Mortal Kombat film came out. So this was very near and dear to me for this to happen. After having that meeting and then having, the final pitch meeting on the ninth floor of the executive level of Warner Brothers, where I'm pitching to people who, I mean, I've heard of them before by name only and haven't met yet. And afterwards, they say they're very impressed with the program. They're willing to take a chance with this. Was a phenomenal experience, but also very, very daunting and very, very tough to pull together. Not in the sense of, oh, is this impossible? It was, we have to do this right. We have to
Yeah.
do this first step right. And I'm very appreciative to my right hand man, Brett Beeling, who has been in the fighting game scene for a long time. Brian Compton, Dustin, Evan, Brendan, the whole team that really put this together. And then we were able to replicate it over in Europe for a truly global event and to have the support of Ryan and Jake Neal, who are some of the best commentators
Hmm.
in the esports space, period. And continue to have the support and also to continue to talk to the players. What was best in the players' minds? It was very important for me to reach out to the players ahead of time and say, "This is a program. This is what it looks like. What do you guys think?" And they loved it. And not only did we accomplish one season, we accomplished 3 seasons, and we were able to show the world what an online league looks like for the fighting game community. And that had such a profound impact, not just with the scene that was already converted, but for the people within the walls of WB and NetherRealm. So much so that NetherRealm completely recoded their game and came out with MKXL, which had a way better netcode, which is now the
Right.
standard. And the same and even better netcode we'll see in Injustice 2. It was life changing. It was life changing for the players. It was life changing for the people behind the scenes. And for me, it was quite an experience to have a vision, put a budget and a deck to that vision, pitch it to certain executive key people, and for it to come true. So I will always remember what that experience was like, and that has strengthened every single person that has been involved in those shows to move on to even greater things.
Right, right. Speaking of life changing, one guy in particular, his entire life changed with Mortal Kombat and other games too, but with Mortal Kombat especially. Talk to me about Sonic Fox. Like this guy, I mean, he basically won almost everything in Mortal
Yeah.
Kombat. Would Mortal Kombat would Pro League have been, I guess, as successful as it was if there was no Sonic Fox?
Well, that's a very good question. I think Pro League was very successful because of Sonic Fox, because the narrative was who can beat this guy, who can beat him,
Sure.
who can beat him. And when we saw you could say the final stages of the competitive season after season 3, then we had other events such as SoCal Regionals, and to see Scar and Sonic Fox go toe to toe after the latest patch was dropped, which fixed some
Right.
issues with Alien, and to see Scar defeat Sonic Fox, it was a big win for everybody because they knew, okay, this kid's amazing. He's a 3-time champion, but is he undefeatable? And that was not the case. We also saw Tekken Master almost take down Sonic Fox, which to me was
Hmm.
one of the most impactful matches in all of Evo last year, where Sonic Fox had to take off his hat and his trademark
Yeah.
gloves and really get serious against Tekken Master. So you wouldn't have those storylines without the domination that is Sonic Fox.
Yeah.
Uh, the kid won over $200,000. He's able to go to any college he wishes. He's going to college in New York. And for me, that's one of the proudest moments that all of us that created the Pro League have, is this kid has a life-changing amount of money, and now he's able to
Yeah.
pursue any dream he wants to. And he is very, very excited for Injustice 2. Will he have the same domination? It depends on which character he chooses. But now that so many people have seen what the MKX Pro League was all about, they're excited to see what these other leagues that have recently
Hmm.
been released announcement-wise are going to be about for Injustice 2.
Yeah, let's before I ask you about that, I want to get your general thoughts based on all the information that's out there about Injustice 2 right now. How you feel about it? I'm sure you're interested in playing. What characters are you looking at?
So I'm very, very happy with Injustice 2 when it comes to the entire structure of the game. The gear system to me is the best system that I've seen to incorporate that progressive feeling, right? Everybody
Hmm.
wants to feel like
Yeah.
they're progressing in a video game, especially if they're getting their butt whipped in a fighting game. But that's the beauty about a fighting game, is that when you lose, you know exactly why you lost. You can look at the
Mhm.
data, you can look at the frame data, you can go back and look at the video file if you recorded it and see, okay, I got blown up here, I didn't block properly here, I went for an unsafe move here, and you can really analyze how to get better and better and better. With Injustice 2, you have a gear system that every time you play a match, you get a piece of gear, no matter what. And people can customize how their DC characters look. That to me is already profound, and a lot of people are going to be interested in that. Add on a story that I don't know what's going to happen, but I have a lot of faith in NetherRealm to put on really good
Yeah.
stories. I was so impressed with the Mortal Kombat 9 story that I thought, yes, this is exactly what we should be having in fighting games with this type of story. Then they gave us Mortal Kombat X, and I was even more enthused with these new characters and what happened. So now you have these DC legends, and you have a story where Superman is the tyrant. I'm very fascinated about that. Superman is my favorite comic book hero, and I feel that modern media kind of gets him wrong. They keep making him an alien, or they keep making him a god. No, Superman is just a dude from Kansas trying to do the right thing.
Hmm.
His power is what make him great, but how he was raised by Jonathan and Martha Kent is what makes him Superman. So to see that flipped on its head when Clark Kent finally snaps, to me, is a very compelling story. And we've seen that not only in the video game, but also how well the comic books have been doing. So I look forward to that as well. What's going to happen in the story? I don't know. I don't want to be spoiled. So add that on to all of the tournament capabilities of this game. Smartly, NetherRealm has designed the gear system to allow you to still keep the same cosmetic look, but remove any differences to your abilities or
Gotcha.
your
Right.
stats. And I think
Yeah.
that's really, really smart. So add all these elements in along with a really strong netcode, and you have a fighting game that's accessible to the mainstream audience as well as
Yeah.
the fighting game enthusiast. And it's DC, bro. I mean, everybody loves to see what these characters are able to bring. And now we got characters like Swamp Thing and Dr. Fate and Captain Cold and Atrocitus and Darkseid. All these characters that comic book enthusiasts have loved or have loved to hate, and now they get to play them. And now they get to see how much they can whoop on Supergirl or Catwoman or Poison Ivy or others. For me, I loved playing Supergirl in the beta, and then I started to pick up Black Canary. So those are the first two characters that I'm definitely going to dive into. But I'm always a fan of Selena Kyle, man. Catwoman is
Okay.
my favorite heroine in DC Comics, so I'm going to give her a shot. However, that Flash super is so good, so I can't ignore Flash either. But that's the beauty about this game. There's so many different characters that I want to play, and not just play for like an hour or two. Really dive in and get good. So when I
Yeah.
go toe to toe with some of these pros, I can actually take one game out of 50 against them.
Yeah, I to be honest with you, I Injustice 2 wasn't on my radar until I believe it was Swamp Thing that was revealed. And I just saw that and I'm like, well, here's an interesting character to begin with. Actually, Swamp Thing's one of my favorite characters.
Mhm.
I always DC. I love comic books. I love DC. I love Marvel. I love all comic books, right? But for some reason, I've always gravitated towards DC comic books. And so I don't know why Swamp Thing. Maybe it was when I was a kid, the Swamp Thing movie, like right, it was like I just love Swamp Thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then I saw Doctor Fate, and I was like, that's it. I'm all in. Like I have this for some reason I have this soft spot in my heart for those golden age heroes. And I remember being at a comic book convention one time. I got a sketch from artist Steven Sadowski, who at the time was still doing a lot of the JSA stuff when
Mhm.
they kind of rebooted it. I think it was what late or early 2000s. And my all-time favorite character is the Alan Scott Green Lantern, which is the 1940s Justice Society version of Green Lantern. I remember getting a sketch from him and him asking, "Why is this your favorite character?" I'm like, "I don't know." He's like, "You're so young." I'm like, "I don't know. I just love these characters, right?" And of course, I think Jeff Johns was writing those characters at that time. So I mean, amazing writer. It makes sense that I would love what he's doing. But that Doctor
My
Fate, that trailer, man. Oh,
I
I'm
loved
like,
it.
oh, that's
The
it. I'm in. This is the guy I'm playing.
the Justice Society as they were portrayed in Smallville, which is a show that I loved and would watch the latest episodes every week, and I feel is one of the best shows when it comes to an ending. They wrapped it up
Yeah.
very, very nicely, very emotional. It was awesome. But my love for Doctor Fate was initiated by that show,
Okay.
and to know about the Justice Society, or at least I had heard about them and I knew about them in the comics. But I didn't really dive as much as you did into who these
Yeah.
characters were. And for them to be portrayed in the TV show so well, and Doctor Fate was so cool, I
Yeah.
thought, okay, this is something I definitely want to be, want to keep tabs on. And as soon as I saw his helmet on the T-shirt when they gave us the
Yep.
T-shirts to wear, I thought, yes,
Yeah.
okay, I want to see how this character performs, and he performs very well in the game. He's a range character, and I
Oh,
played a
all
lot of
right.
Katana and MKX, so I'm all about that
Okay.
range character.
Enough said. You sold me. Um, Going back to real quick to like the pro league stuff, and actually we'll talk about hometown heroes in just a sec. But I did want to ask you with things like you did the ESL Pro Leagues with Mortal Kombat X. Now you guys are doing the Injustice 2 stuff. Calling back to that Red Bull Battlegrounds conversation we had, how much I don't know how much easier, how much more accessible will Injustice 2 be for circuits or leagues like Pro League or even beyond if any other, leagues pop up with Injustice 2.
Well, it's a very exciting time, but it's also it's kind of like let's wait and see time.
Yeah.
WB has completely embraced esports, and they have been much more involved and have decided to run their own championship series,
Hmm.
working with multiple partners, ESL being one of the partners. So with any program that gets bigger, there's always growing pains and things that need to be addressed or worked on, and there's a lot of professionals that are involved here to make sure that all the players have a smooth experience. But there's different paths to take in order to go to the culmination event. And those
Right.
different paths are through the Pro Series, which pros will be very accustomed to, not only offline but online. You have the Hometown Heroes Series with GameStop, and that's catering more towards the amateurs to have more of an inclusive experience where people that are picking up the game at GameStop can hear about this program, know they can sign up for free. Be committed to a region, really grow in that region, make friends in that region, perhaps attend some local events in that region, and really build up the space from a grassroots level, but from a grassroots level and an online perspective. Then
Mm.
you have Path to Pro, which is a similar program for Europe. You have Liga Latina, which is another program for the Latin America region. And you have some more information that'll be released hopefully soon. To me, Injustice 2 is the right fit for this because it's going to be rated teen. There's
Hmm.
no graphic violence, which was the only obstacle for Mortal Kombat X when it came to sponsors and sponsorship.
Right.
We had some sponsorship when it came to Xbox or PlayStation and Razer, and it was good to see that initial approach. But with a game like Injustice 2 that features DC legends, to me,
Hmm.
sponsors are going to be more inclined to throw some money towards it and to get their name out there because they can attach themselves to, let's say, a PG-13 movie, which we see that from the Justice League movies coming out, or a
Right.
rated R movie, which is tougher to market to a mainstream audience and to get sponsors behind. It's a little bit two different approaches that you have to make with those game titles, but that's really the only big difference, and that allows, in my opinion, Injustice 2 to have a broader podium for more and more people to see this game, this tournament, how it
Sure.
works. And because WB, has the CW, they have their films coming out. There's a lot of great marketing potential that ties in everything that the DCEU is doing on television and in theaters, along with this video game.
Right. Right. So Hometown Heroes, Pro League. I guess for those that don't know or don't remember, Mortal Kombat X, basically the pros that we know, the Sonic Foxes, the Scars, go through this circuit to get into eventually finals where they'll compete. I would assume probably on TV as it was before. But for Hometown Heroes, this is different. It's amateur focused, and these are some conversations we've actually had regarding Street Fighter V as well. Is the idea of pros versus amateurs? Um, are there any sort of how do you define that? Like, is there a way to define that to prevent maybe someone, maybe Scar's probably a bad example because he's a sponsored player, but a pro who might want to enter these amateur tournaments, is there a way to prevent that and to truly kind of make this amateur focused?
True. There's a lot of good questions, and the proper rule sets and enforcement has to come from the WB side since they are ultimately in charge of the whole program. But we'll work with them and with their other partners to make sure that it's free, or not, I'd say the best way for the players, right? That makes the most sense. And yet create some sort of differentiation between established pro and an amateur. Now, the definition of pro is kind of tough for us because when you think of pro, at least in the traditional sports sense, you think of somebody that's paid full time.
Sure.
This is what they do, and that's all there is to it. I mean, they're a dedicated athlete, and everybody knows them for this. And the FGC, not a lot of people are making enough money for this to be a full time job.
Yeah.
But there are established individuals that do very, very well in offline tournaments, or you could say in pro established tournaments.
Hmm.
So as long as there is a clear indication and it's all agreed upon amongst all the programs, there will be a separation between, okay, what's considered a pro and what's considered an amateur. And in my personal opinion, that differentiation has to be established with Combo Breaker to see who
Okay.
will be the top players at that event, because Injustice 2 is a different game compared to Mortal Kombat X, and it's a different game compared to Injustice, even though there's going to be a lot of, I would say, same individuals that continue to perform very, very well. I'm very confident that Sonic Fox will be one of the top players.
Sure.
Now, hypothetically, let's say we had Combo Breaker identify the top 8 of the top 16 players. Then for the rest of the month, for the month of June, since Combo Breaker will happen at the end of May, those top players cannot compete in the amateur circuit. Now we could apply that to CEO. If CEO happens later in the month, then that could apply for everybody in the month of July. Those people that made
Right.
either top 8 or top 16 at CEO are not allowed to play in the amateur circuit. We did something similar at ESL with the Challenger Cup versus the Pro League. If you
Right.
were
Right.
top 8 in the Pro League points wise that week, you could not play in the Challenger Cup. Now, those are recommendations. Those are suggestions. The official ruling still has to come from WB. But like I said, we're working with all the partners to make sure that it's fair and makes the most amount of sense. I don't expect an amateur day one to pick up the game and then be as good as Sonic Fox
Hmm.
within a couple weeks. But we want to give a playing field that allows first timers or people that are not as good as Sonic Fox or Scar or Pig of the Hut or others to get a little bit further in the tournament, to know what it's like to compete in an online bracket, and to start to see the light that, hey, I am a top 8 player, a top 16 player in this region, in Seattle or LA or San
Right.
Diego. And when you have more people involved that way and you create, let's say, the minor leagues or the amateur circuit, you're creating more fans. You're creating more dedicated people that are not only going to tune in for the finals or tune in for any primetime event, they're going to bring their friends. They're going to bring their family. They're going to tell them about it. And they're going to say, like, hey, this is a great experience. I didn't make top 16, but I got top 32 this week, and I'm going to give it a shot next week. We wanted to instill that because without that grassroots layer, which is already established in the FGC, your game's not going to be viable. There's not going to be a lifeblood from the grassroots area. And we wanted to expand on that and also partner with a retailer. Doing it at GameStop and having these 8 dedicated GameStop locations is really good because it exposes this program to so much foot traffic in these stores. And it
Right.
also allows the region to have a home base for this program that they know, okay, the regional finals will happen at this store. We know where it is. We'll put it on the calendar and we're going to go support our friend if he makes top 4. And so trying to utilize all those strengths that partnering with a retailer brings, along with an online league. It's been a whirlwind to put it all together. Been working on this for many months, and because WB has a much broader scope for this entire program, I'm grateful that I'm a part of it, that ESL is a part of it, and we're committed to make GameStop Hometown Heroes the best it can be. And we entrust WB to make this program as a whole the best it can be. But any first season is going to have lessons that we can learn, ways to improve, feedback from
Hmm.
players and for fans, and we can make those adjustments for the future. And we did that with the MKX Pro League many times, and we shared that information with WB, and I'm sure they're going to apply that for their future programs as well. We're very excited for the game to be released. It's just around the corner, and we're excited to see how this entire program is going to shape up.
All right. Before we wrap up, I did want to ask you. We've seen with Street Fighter V, a lot of new younger players come into the scene, and in one particular case, Punk is just dominating, right? And a lot of younger players are doing really well in that game. Uh, I don't know sort of the history of the NRS games as they've released. When it comes to like Mortal Kombat 9, then Injustice, the first one, and then Mortal Kombat 10. Is that something you can kind of foresee with Injustice 2, that you're going to see? Of course, a new game attracts new players, but do you think we'll see more younger players or newer players? They don't even necessarily have to be young, right? Newer players that come into this game and this scene and do really well.
I think we're going to have a mix of those newer players that will make some headlines, and that's why we want to focus on each individual region every Wednesday to
Right,
highlight,
right.
okay, if you've never heard of this guy before, time to write him down on your list because he's performing very well with this character, et cetera, et cetera. I also feel there's a number of players who really connected with Injustice that didn't really tap into or dedicate themselves to Mortal Kombat X that are on the
Hmm.
comeback. Rico Suave had mentioned that he's really excited about Injustice 2.
Sure.
You have players that had seen so much domination of other players in Mortal Kombat X, so they felt like, okay, Mortal Kombat's a great game. You push a button to block. I'm more about directional blocks like Street Fighter or Injustice 2, and that's really their bread and butter. That's what they're going to excel at. So we'll
Right,
see some of
right.
that. Do I predict any of these amateurs, moving on into the pro series or doing very, very well up against these pros? It's up in the air. But what we did learn from the MKX Pro League is do not discount the Latin America region. Do not discount the Russian region if the Russians are able to play in the European Cups.
Hmm.
But you cannot discount these players that maybe are not as known in the global scene that are known in their respective scenes. And hopefully that's what we'll get out of these different regions as we're able to tell these storylines, and know who is the best of the best, not just from the
Yeah.
established pros, but from the rising ranks of these new individuals that want to show what they're capable of in the fighting game world.
I don't recall seeing. Are there dates for any of the Hometown Hero stuff yet?
Yeah, so all the dates are on the website. You can just search GameStop Hometown Heroes on Google, or you can check out the sites that we've listed on social media. But the dates are there. The first cup, which is going to be on Sunday, is June 4th. And the
Okay.
first broadcast, which I believe is going to highlight New York City, is June 7th. And that'll be a continual repetition. Every Sunday, the online cups will feature one region on Wednesday. And we have the whole list of which those different regions are on our calendar on our website.
Sure.
So that'll happen for 10 weeks. And then the regional finals will happen on August 12th. And then the top 8 finals, which all the regional champions will then go to Vegas, that'll happen
Right.
on August 27th. So make sure to mark your calendars. Every broadcast on Wednesday is 5 to 8 p.m. Pacific time. And the regional finals will start at 10 a.m. in the morning, since we're going to cover all 8 regions throughout the day. It's going to be a long day, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And then on August 27th, the top 8 finals will start around 4 p.m. Pacific time. And all those times are Pacific time.
Obviously, if you haven't, or if you've been looking forward to this game, it comes out, what, May 16th? Combo Breaker is just around the corner. We should actually be there as well. That takes place the weekend of May 27th, 28th? I believe those are the
final
dates.
weekend in May. It's Memorial Day weekend.
Yeah.
I'll be there as well.
Oh, cool. Well, we'll see you there, and hopefully, and at that point, we'll see how your Catwoman does against my Dr. Fate.
You got it. You got it. That challenge is accepted. You heard it right here, right now. We'll see if the Hadou wants to do like a special show match or something.
I don't know about all that now. Come on.
Yeah. Bring it, man. Bring it. I'll brush up my Catwoman.
Yeah, that sounds good, Josh. I really appreciate you jumping on and talking about, of course, everything you've done. I think it's really cool that people get to know more about how you kind of got where you were. I feel like that's a really interesting story, especially in a time, like I said, where people are really interested in esports, but not just in playing. Not all of us are good enough to play competitively, right? Like, we can sign up for tournaments, but we're not all that great. Yeah, I really appreciate you jumping on talking about that, and of course MKX Pro League's ESL stuff and Injustice 2. I think a lot of people are excited about that. I am. Can't wait to get my hands on Dr. Fate. So yeah, looking forward to it, man. Talk to you later.
Thank you very much. Have a good one.